Really cool airplane. It's gonna make some noise. Yeah. So for aviators, it's like music. Okay. When it takes off, I'll just talk a little louder and everybody will love it.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, you know. If I'm Malcolm Brubaker. I love flying ultralights. Yeah, I was skydiving. I started off with one bungee jump. February, cold, man, was it cold. Went over to the next town over and did my first bungee jump. I liked the heights and the rush, of course. I'd arranged to go skydiving, figured out what the prices were, had a couple people said they'd come. Nobody showed up. I went by myself. Had five static line jumps, went into accelerated free fall. When I bought my own rig, had the reserve seal was broken. They had to be inspected every 3 months. The reserve seal was somehow broken. The guy said, "Hey, you got a broken reserve seal on that reserve. You know, it's against the law for you to jump." So I had to land with the plane, and when I did, that pilot brought that thing in, and it was just the way the ground comes up, the plane flared. I realized skydiving was probably too competitive of a sport for me, and I like the idea of being in the air alone. On the way home, found a guy with an airplane on the side of the road. There was a windsock there, and I stopped, turned around, told him I've been skydiving. He said, "We have a local meeting, a monthly meeting, and you can come with us and meet the guys." And I did. I met a guy that had a plane for sale. I bought that plane, like I said, and I bought it that same month for myself for my birthday, and I've been flying ever since. The first plane I bought had faded wingtips because it had sat in a guy's garage right near the window, and the tips got pretty faded. I hadn't realized it or even known anything about the fabric when I bought the first plane. And I decided I could replace the panels on that Quicksilver MX pretty easily. I bought the equipment I needed and just made that first repair. And since I had fabric and a table and a sewing machine that I'd bought for that, I ended up building a whole set from the old ones myself and sold them to a guy. Never put them on my own airplane. I sold that plane and moved up to a Kolb, and then sold that set of sails to a guy who put them on his Quicksilver MX, two-seater actually, and flew it for a while. He ended up having a little incident with the motor out and hit a fence, making it back to the airport, and flipped it and totaled her. But they were all right. Bruised ego, and you know. Well, everything comes to me from customers requesting a set of sails. I bought a bunch of patterns. They're Mylar. They've got lines on them, crib notes, little dots and holes. You trace everything out and basically sew it together step by step. Kind of like when you were a kid, you used to trace the dots. It seemed pretty complicated at first, you know. These patterns have been for sale. Some of them date back to the mid 80s. They sat for a long time in a building. The guy who built most of the patterns built a lot of sails for a lot of different manufacturers. He had his own design, and he was killed in an ultralight crash. And that stuff sat for years before his dad sold it. He sold them to two other people who came and went pretty quick, like a flash in the pan. you got out of the hobby, any business you get into seems like it's going to be quick and easy money, but it's a labor of love, and you got to stick with it. So I've been doing it now for quite a while, and I'm still learning. You know, somebody might tell you, they learned to play the violin in 3 months, but they didn't really learn to play the violin. They just learned a lot about the violin, and then they quit learning. You know, it'll take a lifetime, so I plan on doing this for quite a while. So, a guy will call me up, and it's pretty obvious he doesn't have the slightest idea of what he just bought. And can they be relieved? I mean, really happy to find out that I'm willing to build a set of sails for their model, because different manufacturers had different sail makers making the sails for that model. A lot of these guys are no longer in business. Now the next guy will call, and he's on his 3rd project. He knows exactly what he wants, and I can tell by the way I'm talking to him that he's going to be a good customer. Not a lot of training involved with getting them through the process. And it's nothing to get a phone call from a guy that I built a set of sails for 2 years ago. And they've been sitting in a box, and now they're getting ready to install them. And they really haven't learned that much about the industry in that time. So I go through it with them and coach them along. It's kind of nice when I can do that in my shop while I'm selling sails. There goes a loud one. Don't you wish you were up there? Huh? It's a real barn. It was built for cattle. We were milking 30 head of cattle in here. And the room that I sew sails in now was actually the stanchions. When I moved in here, it had a gravel floor. I thought it'd be simple. Just pull out 3 inches of gravel and pour some cement. But underneath all that gravel was 2 feet of concrete. Chunks and break and busted up pieces. Had to pull all out. Change my shoes and put on my apron.
Yeah.
And get started sewing sails. This is my shop, all right.
All right. Let's take a look. I'll follow you.
All right. Working on a weed hopper next year. It's gonna be a different plane altogether. A lot of times people show up. This is right where they see me. They open the door, and here I am, wearing my apron, pair of scissors. Like I said, this was cattle stanchions. Used to milk cows in here. This was a real barn at one point. Got a nice foam rubber floor, air conditioned. It's one of the best jobs I've ever had. So here's a Flightstar pattern. You can see the pattern was designed in '87. This is single seat, Spider, single seat, 2 seats. Long wing, longer wing, and red. So it's kind of like a map in a foreign language. When I pulled all these patterns out, I didn't even have any idea what I was looking at. It was kind of intimidating. But as you build, set after set, you pretty much get the hang of it. You can see here the crib notes. You use 1 piece of Mylar for 2 different models, if you know how to read it. The Pioneer Flightstar was the first one designed. When you put the 2 pieces of fabric together, you've got zippers and patches and velcroed covered pieces inside the field, how do you get that laid out flat, totally flat, taped together, matched perfectly, and then sew that 1/2-inch line so that it looks good on a frame that you've got no idea who bent that frame to begin with. In the early days, a lot of sail lofts had their own, a lot of manufacturers had their own sail loft. So they'd have a guy bending tubes, and they'd have a guy sewing fabric, and they'd have a guy drilling plates. And when the plane all come together, at the very end, if it didn't look right, they could take that apart and then clean it up. And that equipment bends that tube perfectly every time because it's set up on a very complicated jig. That's pretty easy. That's pretty easy to make the pattern fit. Now when you've got a guy with a tubing bender and a felt tip marker and a tape measure, you can imagine how difficult that is to make all of them the same. If a guy hasn't been doing it for a long time, that's why I'll take a pattern, somebody will send me their fabric, I have to, if they don't clean it for me, you'd be surprised how many people will just cut it off with a razor blade because they're in a hurry, run to the store, ship it to me. There's mice nests in that, mud daubers, it's disgusting. I've got an aviation business, right? Sewing sails, selling airplanes, we do the videos, helping people with the paperwork, and even my hobby has to be related to aviation, right? I'm not making propellers for a living, but that's what this thing does. It makes propellers as a pentagram or a replicator. You could make gun stocks off of this. You take one junk propeller that only has to have one good side blade, a lot of measurements, and some metal fittings, the right bit on a good router, plug it in, and you're just making little pieces out of big pieces. The idea is that it follows itself right along, and you just keep routing away.
What would you recommend for your first ultralight craft?
A weed hopper or Quicksilver. I don't sew sails for Quicksilver except the MX. We've got a industry standard. Lots of people that are working with Quicksilvers are sewing Quicksilver sails. I don't sew the Quicksilver sails except for the MX. But the weed hopper, it's a wonderful little flying ultralight. It's simple. The design, it's easy to copy. Nobody knows how many weed hoppers there are with it. They haven't been in manufacture in 25 years, and I still sew several sets a year. People are buying barn finds. The parts are readily available. Lots of people are making the plates. Welding up the front fork is the most difficult thing probably. It's just a fun plane to fly, a simple design. They store easy. They're not as easy to fold up as your Kit Fox or your other folding wing type airplanes. But the battens come out, the wing folds well, it fits in a bag. I know lots and lots of people who keep their weed hopper folded and bring it out, fold it, assemble it in well less than an hour, fly all day, put it away. And as much flying as they're actually doing, it's great for that. I'm Malcolm Brubaker, and I want to thank you all for watching my video. You can contact me anytime on the phone or look me up on the internet. It's greatsalesmi.com.